Hello, this is Dr. Tom Groover from Boulder Chiropractic Clinic, and my guest today is Miwa Mack, the director of the Boulder Psychic Institute. And stay with us because there's some very practical information that we have today about this topic of how to use your inner guidance system, defining what that is and how you can use it for making healthy choices in your life. In an era where most of the information that you get through government and corporate media are guided by commercial purposes rather than purposes for really helping us as people to be healthier and happier in our lives. So we're a source of corporate profit, and in order to achieve that, we have to buy the right food according to what people tell us to do. And what we're really after here is the sense that we don't need these experts to tell us what is best for us, because for the most part, they're not telling the truth, for one thing. And the other thing is that for us to be healthy, we really have to have this sense of field independence or self-determination, so we will know right away what's best for us and what's not good for us, rather than being brainwashed by what's going on out in our environment. So, Miwa, thank you so much for joining us. I figured if any of the people I know, you would understand what I'm talking about here when I ask you questions about this topic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Can you tell us how you define the inner guidance system? I know for me, my inner guidance system has always been, well, am I feeling clear? Am I being with a capital B?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm being, that means that I'm not in a state of conditioning. I'm not in a state of brainwashing. I'm just in the simplest state of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, making judgments is much easier in my life, So a lot of times I have to wait until after I've meditated a few times before I have that clarity, because things get pretty complex in life.
Mm-hmm.
But on a day-to-day basis, as we're moving around in our environment, many of us really do have the capacity to be,
mm-hmm.
and to be able to be field independent in that state and make very useful, what we would call objective decisions for ourselves, based upon an accurate analysis of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say that looks like for you?
Well, with regards to that inner guidance system, for me, what that looks like is having alignment throughout the whole body. So a lot of people use that gut feeling, or I feel this way or I feel that way, and they make choices. But a lot of times people do find themselves maybe making a choice that leads them down a path that isn't so healthy because of what they're feeling. Maybe they're in a bad mood, and so they feel like having a cookie, or they feel like having those potato chips. So it, with regards to that gut feeling, it's really kind of calming the body and making sure that you are really feeling clear, feeling your own energy, your own vibration versus some of those outputs that you were talking about previously, where you get all this information from the outer world. And quite often with regards to what I call your gut feeling, or that clairsentience, people call the ability to feel energy, it's very important to make sure that you're tuning into yourself before you make those sorts of decisions.
Right.
The other level is really making sure that the mind is clear, and that mentally you've quieted the mind, you've made sure that you're not running any self-deprecating thoughts, that you're, because I definitely teach that those self-deprecating thoughts are actually other people's thoughts. One of my biggest truths that I teach at the Boulder Psychic Institute is that for us as human bodies, we were actually designed to succeed. So our human system was designed for success, and what's not successful is most likely not your energy and will have you make choices that are going to be unhealthy.
Right.
So those self-deprecating thoughts, making sure that you clear those out. Any thoughts of confusion or chaos, really kind of coming to that being, or what I call a still place,
Right.
before making any decisions using that inner guidance system.
Very fine. Yeah. So I remember we were talking earlier because I have the fortune of getting to see Miwa from time to time, and we were talking about this subject and the outer inputs and other people's thoughts, and we were also talking about the capacity for people to be receivers, and you were talking about the collective thoughts, or the thoughts that are occurring in your environment, and how that influences your sense of perception and your judgment on making appropriate choices that are in our own best interest. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of like a fish being in water. Until they get taken out of that water, they don't really realize what they're in. And a lot of the work that I do has to do with maintaining a clear sense of autonomy, or some people call it your personal space, and making sure that the energy from or thought patterns or social conditionings, or we might call them social norms or social rules of engagement, or even that government kind of conditioning, medical conditioning, all those energies don't necessarily come in, so that you're not swimming in it. For me, the biggest way that I know that I'm not swimming in that energy and taking it on is when I can really imagine or visualize a clear bubble or personal space around me. And when that space is clean and clear, I'll notice that I can be kind of like in the eye of the storm, where there I am totally at peace. The whole world can be spinning around me in chaos, but there I am at peace, and I can really see and kind of slow things down almost to be able to see, oh, yeah, I see that that's the truth of what's happening here, that's the truth of what's happening here, and hence I'm going to make my decision from this still point in the eye of the storm.
Right. Yeah, I think this is really valuable information. I know that for me, I first became aware of the public relations, advertising industry, a number of years ago, when I was taking a course called the Democracy School. And it was very revealing. There was this man, Edward Bernays, that is the father of public relations, and he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And so his realization was that you can actually control the human mass mind, so to speak. You can condition people to do what you want them to do. And so he worked a lot for government and Wall Street. And, they developed a way of, repetition of messages that got people into basically the modern day consumer culture, and used a messaging for government purposes to get people to do what the government wanted them to do. And there are lots of examples of that we learned, but if you're interested in this, you'll find that looking up Edward Bernays online, you can learn a lot about what the game plan is, what the playbook is like that's being used on us all the time, particularly if we watch television, or we listen to the radio,
or surf the internet,
or read newspapers and magazines. All those messages are all jumping out at us all the time, the fashions are largely determined by this. One of the early examples of this was female smoking. Bernays designed a campaign to popularize the smoking of cigarettes among the female population by having a campaign where a large group of these women, I think they were glamorous women, marched in a parade in New York City together, and at a certain key point they stopped and pulled out cigarettes and lit them up and posed.
Mm-hmm.
And they called the cigarettes in the write-up, the public relations that went out around this, these were called torches of freedom. And it was like maybe one of the early stages of the women's lib movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if this happened. I think it happened after women were allowed to vote. I think it happened after women were declared to be persons. But it was a big social breakthrough, and I know that my wife, I always complain when we watch old movies or current movies which depict the Roaring Twenties,
Mm-hmm.
because all the time throughout the movie, in every scene, somebody's lighting up a cigarette in some really fashionable way and taking a puff, and then, of course, they always have plenty of alcohol around. And that's in almost every scene, And I object to that, and Karen says, well, you have to realize that this was a time of huge social change, and people were feeling a sense of liberation, and they were rebelling against the establishment. This was the way they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's unfortunate that they have to rebel in a way that would create dis-ease or unhealth in the body.
Yeah.
And I really do see that is kind of the bigger master plan. As a matter of fact, I think it was in the 1950s or 60s, the Taiwanese government was having a difficult time with their economy and wondering how they could boost their economy. The GDP was down. There were all sorts of levels where it was a fairly poor country. And so they brought in top experts from the U.S., from big businesses or the government, and they brought in top experts to research and study the Taiwanese people to see, well, what is happening that their economy, they can't seem to grow their economy. And the conclusion that these top experts came to was that your people are too happy.
Right.
They're too happy. And if you make them unhappy and you create a social scene where they are unhappy and wanting things, and if they buy this certain thing, then they will be happy, then your economy will increase. And that's what the government did through that recommendation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, and really the idea of using your inner guidance system is if you look at it, that's an inalienable characteristic, which is something that's present in all of us, and the capacity to do that is the thing that will really make us happy, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what leads us to happiness. And so a lot of times we're confused and we think that short-term gratification is what makes us happy, that objects make us happy, that other people make us happy. And what we don't realize a lot of times is by chasing after all these things, we never find happiness.
Mm-hmm.
That happiness is an inalienable state that resides within us and which spontaneously expresses into our life when we are field independent, when we are self-determined.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a guy at the same time as Freud and Jung and who was the other famous psychologist? Well, no, those two major powerhouses in Europe. He was Alfred Adler. And he was a socialist. And he believed that for people to be psychologically healthy, that they have to be self-determined,
Mm-hmm.
which means really you have to be your own boss. So, I mean, if we have to work in environments where we can't be our own boss, so to speak, there must be ways, that people can establish their bubble,
Mm-hmm.
establish their autonomy, no matter what's going on in the outside environment, and develop that sense of self-determination, even though people are bossing us around and making decisions for us all the time.
Yeah, well, and I think that the big social lie out there is that you have no say over your external environment and that things are just going to happen to you. So maybe your boss does something onto you and you're a victim to that. And that victim mentality is what I think really crushes the human spirit and crushes that level of self-determination. And we're very much sold on the fact that we're victims. Whereas in fact, if you can maintain your bubble and your autonomy and your self-determination and really recognize that the way that you maintain your own inner vibration, your own inner peace, that will reflect and attract to you different experiences that might be more positive or might feel more supportive of where you're at in life.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like we have someone out there that needs to find that state right now. It sounds like they're maybe like 2 years old and they're having a tantrum. They probably had to take them out of the restaurant next door to the outside. But that's an experience of lack of self-determination for children because they get trapped into family and social situations and have no choice because the adults are determining everything for them. Yeah, so I know there are child-rearing techniques that help to develop that sense of self-determination in children, and I think that the adults need to have that first. So can you give us a little bit of a taste of what it means to be in that state of, well, what I would call it when I am being, I experience that my subjective experience, I have the experience that my subjectivity is objective. That I actually have achieved a level of knowledge, like self-knowledge. And when I talk about self, and when you speak and use the term self, I think what we're saying is that we're talking about the higher self, the big S self. The self just is. It's not it's awareness of who we really are. It's awareness of our infinite potential. And that we only use a small portion of our potential mostly in society. And we're limited. We have barriers on our minds and on our sensory awareness where we're maybe using 10% of our potential for sensing and thinking and feeling. So when we expand that, the farther we expand it, the more objective we get. The more we reach a point of that ideal truth. That absolute, unchanging, this is reality, and everything less than that is an illusion. It's a misinterpretation. It's a corrupted sensation. Perception is corrupted. Thinking and feeling are corrupted by the irregularities and imperfections in the limited conscious thinking capacity, the conscious, feeling capacity of the person. So you've talked about, the chakras and how the chakras will light up and they'll spin in a certain direction. And, there's ways beyond creating your bubble, but getting a sense that your whole self, your holistic being is involved in this whole evaluation process. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, there's two things that I would like to talk about with regards to how do you create your own autonomy and self-determination. And the first would be to be embodied, to be in your body, to be in your own space, in your own field. As a psychic, most of the time when I watch people walking around in the big world, they tend to be about 20 or 30 feet in front of them. So if the chair is my body and I'm the soul, or I am the higher self that you're talking about, right, or the consciousness part of me, then most people as they traverse through life, they're about 20 or 30 feet in front of them. Maybe they're above themselves, maybe they're off to the side. As a matter of fact, you can always tell where you are on a higher self or consciousness level if you interact with a little infant. Right? Little infants, right? What do? They look above you, they look to the side, and you get the adult, no, look at me here. And the infant's like, no, I'm tracking you on a spirit level because I just fell from heaven and I'm used to communicating on a soul-to-soul level, not a body-to-body level.
Right.
And so infants will always give you great feedback. If that infant looks you right in the face, you know, oh yeah, I'm right in my own space, in my own body, and hence in that being state accessing my own information.
So we should all have an infant monitoring us at every moment.
I will say, people under 1.5 feet tall, they're the most psychic people in the world, and they've taught me so much.
What about animals? I have a sense that you used to know my dog Snoopy, and I had a feeling that he could see, and I used him all the time as a reflection of how I'm doing.
Oh, pets are great. They're so sensitive. Oftentimes I have so many students report once they learn how to get more grounded and connected to Mother Earth, their pets just can't help but be on their lap.
Right.
I know for me, I'll go to the grocery store and just be, really, really grounded, really centered in my body. And little kids will come up and just lean up against me, and they'll just love that energy. Oh, somebody who's not floating, somebody who's very much in their truth, in their power. And those little kids will just lean up and all.
That's interesting because, a lot of us have worked. I mean, I'm in connection with a whole group of meditation people that do transcendental meditation, and we've been meditating most of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the goal is to be in that state of being where we're fully integrated and that we have self-awareness. So awareness of the higher self.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for us, that experience was something that happened fairly spontaneously. There weren't any techniques that we used to produce that other than to meditate twice a day. And so what I'm sensing is that through the inclusion of some knowledge of how the whole mechanism works, and so practice that we could use whatever potential that we have at the moment to get as close to that state as possible.
Yeah, it's very repeatable, actually, and you can produce that quality through practice. And so, if you will, when you get that person who's not in their bodies, who's maybe 20 or 30 feet in front of them, that is a person that will fall into the television and become the effect of the advertising, and then they need to go get their McDonald's.
Yeah.
Or that is the person that is essentially placed their outer world as primary, as the senior level of influence. Right? And this is what we're talking about when you are allowing all those outside influences to affect you, then you're going to make those unhealthy choices. And one of the first, simplest way to make sure that you're making your inner world the primary decision-making point of reference is to first just make sure that you, on a consciousness level, you're in your body.
Right.
And so it's actually a pretty simple technique. I'm sure you probably do it in meditation where you can just close your eyes and breathe and literally just imagine all of your energy coming back to you and just being more within and contained within your own body.
Right.
And oftentimes, if you can do that, I have worked with lots of students that have healed their eyesight. Because if you think about the optical nerves, if you're over there trying to reach out and grab the visual world around you, that's not actually the way the optical nerve was designed. The optical nerve is designed to receive light. And most people's eyes have the reverse polarity where they're trying to grasp light instead of letting light come in.
Very interesting.
So when you're in your body and kind of looking out at the world from behind your eyes, that's when you're going to have a better sense of, here's my autonomy, here's my space. The outer world isn't as important as what's going on within me. So I'll always say to my students, as you're walking around during the day, can you see your nose? Can you feel your toes? And are you looking out and just letting the light come into your eyes.
Right.
And if you're straining your eyes, if you're kind of like doing this as you go through your day,
Right.
or even if you're posturing kind of forward, those are going to be some great cues to remind yourself, oh, I'm not in my own body, I'm not in my own integrity. It's time to take a moment, even if it's just a few seconds, close your eyes, breathe. Imagine your energy coming back to you, and then from there, see if you can bring your consciousness to looking out at the world from behind your eyes.
Right.
So that would be the first step.
And that would be what we call the witness, the silent witness. Mm-hmm. It's an impartiality. It's just your witness is actually observing what you're thinking, observing what you're sensing. It's the silent, it's like this movie screen. Mm-hmm. It's the clean movie screen upon which the images of life are projected. Yeah. And it's an experience of no experience. So it's a contradiction, I know, but I mean, it's just that clarity. It's clear. There's nothing there, really.
Yeah. Well, and that is what I call the Sixth Chakra. And the Sixth Chakra sits as a little cylinder between your forehead and the back of your head. And when you're really sitting behind your eyes on a consciousness level,
right.
That's called actually sitting in the seat of your Sixth Chakra. And right. That's where you can access your third eye. And really, this Sixth Chakra is what I call the clearest window into observing your world. It's where if you, on a consciousness level, the higher self part of you can kind of always be walking through your day in the seat of your Sixth Chakra, you're going to see the world from the most neutral perspective.
Right.
The grass is not necessarily greener here or there. The glass isn't necessarily half empty or half full. It just is. And there's a suchness to everything.
Right.
Right. And even you get Buddhist monks who teach this kind of, Zazen meditation where you sit there and you just observe the world around you with an open-eyed meditation. And the point of it is to not see the world as bigger or smaller than what it is, right? And this is easily accessed by simply bringing your conscious awareness to, as I walk through my day, am I looking out at the world from behind my eyes?
Right. So, so what it sounds like is that people who base their decision-making and their evaluations, their judgment on the outer world are more subject to unhappiness and making choices which are not aligned necessarily with them personally. Because we all have our own individuality. And there's really not any one thing that's best for everyone, except maybe things like fundamentals like clean air and clean water and clean food and, the basics. But I mean, in terms of what you should be doing with your life, where should you be at what time, all of those, choices, what direction should you be taking in your professional life or in your social life, all of those things are very personal. And there's not any one answer to any. Those answers have to come from within.
Yeah, and with that Taiwanese government study, how do you make a group of people unhappy? Well, you teach them to be outside of themselves. You teach them to want and kind of be out here grasping at what they don't have.
Right.
Whereas if a society of people, you look at the indigenous cultures, they're pretty embodied. You see them in their dances, they're in their bodies.
Right.
And when you're within yourself, then you have everything you need. You have everything to your own disposal. Just like what I said, our bodies are designed for success, and if you're in it, you will succeed. You will obtain that happiness, or what I would call a peaceful state.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I really thank you so much for this conversation. Every time I'm with you, it's profound, and this is the same type of experience of profundity. And I hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation. And if you would like to hear more of it, we can always have Miwa come back if you let me know. Yeah. And she can fill us in on some more techniques for being self-determined and therefore achieving greater happiness and health in our life. Thanks, Miwa.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.